Taking this chance, let's introduce Gao Zhang's character. Gao Shang was just one of his many names. He had so many fake names that even he couldn't remember them all, changing them as needed. On the surface, Gao Shang was a master in the business world. Though barely in his early 30s, he already owned a very large company that bought and sold goods, with business doing very well. This earned him the title most promising person in the business world. He was always needed at fancy social events. But secretly, like many others, he didn't mind doing illegal things, though our Mr. Gao refused to call them illegal. He said that his dealings only covered areas that the law couldn't reach, and he simply acted for the law. For example, there was a well-known gold smuggling group in the area, so powerful and skilled that the police couldn't do anything. However, sometimes, a large shipment of gold would suddenly disappear during transport, leaving the big smuggling group to complain about their loss without success. This was Gao Zhang's special ability. Another example, a rich businessman had so much cash in his safe that he couldn't even count it himself. And the common problem with rich businessmen was that they didn't trust others, so of course, he wouldn't hire anyone to count his money. So, Gao Shang would offer to help on a dark and windy night. He would secretly open the safe and slip a small part of the money into his own pocket to make the rich businessman's burden lighter. Furthermore, if local drug dealers prepared a large amount of cash to buy drugs from foreign drug sellers, and if the well-informed Gao Shang found out about this beforehand, he would cleverly pretend to be the foreign drug seller. After collecting a large amount of cash, he would then give a large bag of high-quality flour to the local drug dealers. Through these activities, Gao Shang earned a lot of money. Sometimes, he would give a small part to charity anonymously, so over time, he actually became known as a chivalrous thief who robbed the rich to help the poor. However, he himself never thought of himself that way. He had been doing these things for more than a year, naturally making many enemies. Now, the two men in the taxi were definitely his enemies. But Gao Shang couldn't remember any specific time he had made enemies with these two. He just found the driver's face familiar. He thought for a moment and decided that these two must be minor figures. Otherwise, how could he not remember them? Gao Shang felt even more at ease. Minor figures were the easiest to deal with. He even comfortably put his legs up. What happened tonight, however, is worth thinking about carefully. Gao Shang thought to himself. He looked at the very dark street outside, remembering the events of that evening. Half an hour earlier, he was still lying in his warm bed, next to a half-naked beautiful woman. By the way, Gao Shang was at an age where a man is not truly young if he's not a bit of a playboy, and he always had a lot of money. So the women by his side were almost never the same, yet there was one thing they all had in common: they were all curvy and beautiful, full of endless charm. They all tried to win Gao Zhang's heart with their beauty and attraction, but none had succeeded. Under the soft lighting and with charming soft music, Gao Shang looked at the woman next to him, dressed like a doll. Much like one would admire an antique, the woman was giggling and mumbling something unclear. Gao Shang gave a happy smile. Just as he was about to reach for the light switch to turn off the lamp, the telephone rang. Gao Shang immediately sat straight up. "Don't answer it," the woman said with a heavy, stuffy voice, but Gao Shang had already reached out and picked up the phone. He had many homes, and of course, each had a phone, but few of his phone numbers were public. A few special numbers were only for his helpers to contact him in emergencies. He picked up the phone without speaking. A very worried voice came from the other end. "Is that Mr. Gao?" "This is He Tiangshang." The moment the three words He Tiangshang reached Gao Zhang's ears, his legs were already swinging out of bed. "What are you doing?" The beautiful woman on the bed cleverly arranged her long hair to cover her half-naked chest, making her look even more attractive and beautiful, but Gao Shang didn't pay any attention to her at all. "He Tiangshang," his voice was very strict, "I have no business with you. Why are you calling me in the middle of the night?" Gao Shang knew about He Tiangshang. He Tiangshang was not only watched by the local police but also by international police forces, as he was linked to several big jewelry smuggling cases. Furthermore, Gao Shang had heard that jewelry smuggling was just a cover for his real identity. If a person's identity needed to be hidden by being a smuggler, one could easily imagine how scary his original job was. Indeed, what Gao Shang had heard was that He Tiangshang was a spy working for a major country. By using the identity of a smuggler, he managed to avoid getting attention from spies from other countries, thus achieving great success. In recent days, He Tiangshang's actions had not only caught the attention of the police but also of people like Gao Shang. This was because a European scientist living in Myanmar had invented an amazing weapon. If this weapon could be made in large numbers, all guns currently used worldwide would become useless. Simply put, this weapon would shoot a beam of light in a straight line, passing through a person's body without leaving any outside wounds, yet completely destroying inner organs, causing death in a tenth of a second. A sample of this weapon, along with its plans for making it, had been created by the scientist and bought for a large amount of money by a certain country in Southeast Asia that wanted to expand. It was widely rumored that this country had paid £200,000 for it, with the trade of goods and money happening locally, after which the country's agents would transport the secret weapon sample and plans back to their country. £200,000 was a huge amount of money, and it was natural that it would attract the attention of people from all walks of life, especially those involved in illegal activities. However, no one knew what this deadly weapon, which could shoot killer rays, actually looked like, or how it would be transported. The only piece of information all parties got was that He Tianxiong was the local person who would receive it, through whom the death ray weapon and its plans would be handed over. In recent days, more than one person, like Gao Shang, had tried to get their hands on this huge sum of 200,000, but everyone knew how powerful He Tianxiong was. Many, after thinking carefully, decided that going against He Tianxiong would not end well, and so they gave up, but not Gao Shang. 200,000 that could keep Gao Shang comfortable for a very long time. For the past few days, he had been secretly having He Tianxiong's movements watched, but he never expected He Tianxiong to call him in the middle of the night. Gao Shang, listen! He Tianxiong's breathing was fast, and his voice was extremely worried. I need to see you right away. I have something very important to tell you. Come at once. Thoughts raced through Gao Zhang's mind. In an instant, he asked himself hundreds of questions. Why is He Tianxiong looking for me? What important thing does he have to tell me? However, before he could ask those questions, the other person had already hung up. Gao Shang held the phone. Surprised for a moment, the woman's fair arm wrapped around his neck, and her voice, thick with a stuffy nose, cooed, "Ha, darling, aren't you going back to sleep?" Gao Shang almost roughly pushed the arm away, jumped up, and rushed into the next room, a special room in each of his homes. In just 2 minutes, he had dressed, hidden all the tools he might need for a dangerous mission, and came out. The woman also stood up, her eyes wide, and asked, Where are you going?" Gao Shang replied without looking back, "A friend has a sudden illness. I'm going to see him." You. The woman grew worried. "You brought me out of the nightclub, and now you're just leaving?" Gao Shang had already pushed open the door. "There's money in the nightstand drawer. Take as much as you like." "What if I take all of it?" The woman's eyes were again full of flirty charm. "Suit yourself." He slammed the door shut with a bang. The moment Gao Shang closed the door, the woman jumped from the bed with surprising speed. She adjusted the falling strap of her bra, rushed to the window, pulled back a corner of the curtain, and looked down. The window was a large French window, opening onto a very big balcony. As the woman pulled back a corner of the curtain and looked out, she was only checking if Gao Shang had reached the street. She didn't know that a shadow had quickly moved across the balcony. That shadowy figure had clearly been hiding outside the window, watching what was happening inside the bedroom. At that moment, the figure moved away quickly, disappearing into the darkness and hiding. The woman stood in front of the French window. Soon, she saw Gao Shang cross the street. In less than 3 minutes, Gao Shang had called a taxi and driven away. A faint smile appeared on the woman's face. That smile was incredibly evil and scary, quite unsuitable for her attractive body and beautiful face. Twisting her thin, snake-like waist, she went to the telephone. She dialed a number, and the phone rang 7 times. She then put down the phone and dialed the same number again. This time, as soon as the phone rang, someone picked up. The woman's voice was still very low, but no longer as sexy as before. "Hawaii reporting," she said. "San Francisco is listening." Came a rough male voice from the other end. "He's gone." The woman spoke only 3 words, then hung up. She quickly dressed, grabbed her handbag, put on her coat, opened the door, and left. She hadn't even closed the door before she turned back, while the woman was on the phone. The shadow hiding on the balcony had again pressed against the window, looking inside. The moment the woman turned around, the shadow jumped away to the side. The woman walked over to the nightstand, pulled open the drawer, and indeed found several stacks of money inside. She took 2 of them, put them into her handbag, and blew a kiss at the bed she had just left, saying, "Goodbye, Mr. Gao." She smiled proudly, left the room, and slammed the door shut with a bang. Soon after, she appeared on the street. A car drove by, and she got in. The bedroom light was still on, and the shadow hiding on the balcony now began to move. He took out a small knife, made a few scratches on the glass, then poked it with a finger. With a snap, a small hole, just big enough for a hand to reach through, appeared in the window pane. Then, he reached in, easily opened the door, and slipped inside. The room was filled with the smell of expensive perfume and a warm, gentle atmosphere, which was naturally much more comfortable than facing the biting cold wind on the balcony. Therefore, upon entering the room, he stretched and let out a sigh of relief. The room lights were still on, but it was impossible to clearly see who had entered. This was because he was wearing a special outfit like work clothes, which covered his entire body, including his head. With its linen-like fabric, only his eyes were visible. All that could be seen was the gleam of cleverness, strong will, and intelligence in his eyes. After stretching, he pulled back the curtain again and looked outside. The street was completely silent, and there was no one left on the balcony. He went directly to the nightstand. His goal was clearly not money, as there was still money in the nightstand drawer. But he didn't even look at it. His eyes were fixed on the telephone wire. Suddenly, he picked up the wire connecting the phone to the receiver and looked at it carefully. After about a minute, he found a very thin silver wire connected to the telephone line. A look of satisfaction appeared in his eyes. He followed this silver wire to the wall near the nightstand. The wall was covered with wallpaper, looking perfect. However, the man tapped the wall with his finger and immediately found a spot that made a hollow sound. With a strong hit of his palm against the wall, a thwack was heard, and a secret door, about a foot square, sprang open, showing a tape recorder installed inside. The man stood up, lifted the telephone receiver, and the recording tape began to turn. The moment he put the receiver down, the tape recorder stopped. The tape recorder was clearly connected to the phone, able to record everything said during a call. The man put down the receiver, then crouched down again and pressed a button on the tape recorder. He heard the sounds of the phone being dialed a few times, followed by the phone ringing 7 times, then a snap as the call was disconnected, and then again the sound of a number being dialed. Next came the woman's voice. Hawaii reporting. San Francisco is listening. He's gone. A click. Both parties had hung up. The man rewound the tape and listened again. This time, he took out a stopwatch and wrote down the time it took for the telephone's rotary dial to turn during the woman's 2 calls, based on the dial's rotation time. It was possible to figure out what number had been dialed. The man clearly got a satisfactory answer. He took out a small notebook and wrote down the 6 numbers 081487 on one of its pages. Then, he closed the secret door, put the silver wire back into a less obvious spot on the phone line, opened the door, looked outside, and walked out with very light steps. At that time, Gao Shang was in the taxi. Gao Shang, of course, had no idea what the beautiful woman he had met at the nightclub and quickly became close with had done after he left, and the beautiful woman, of course, had even less idea that someone else would enter after he left. Nor did she know that Gao Shang had a recording device installed on his phone, meaning that the person who came in later not only heard the content of the call she made but also knew the number she had dialed. Everyone thought they were the smartest, moving towards victory, but the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind it. There are always those stronger than the strong. In the upcoming battle between powerful people, who would survive and who would die remained unknown. After leaving his home, Gao Shang had long since forgotten about the woman. He kept thinking about why He Tianxiang wanted to see him. Was He Tianxiang finding his current operation too obvious and hard to handle alone, needing his help? If that were the case then, with the right conditions, he might agree. He thought that he wouldn't have to work too hard, and a large reward might be waiting for him, and a triumphant smile appeared on his face without him meaning to.